Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Hoboken Talks. This is the return of Hoboken Talks for the 2025 season, and we're really happy to have a really interesting program tonight, starting off with a good one. I'm sitting next to Dr. Edwin Duroy, who many of you may know from his education and political career here in Hoboken. And he's going to share stories about growing up here in Hoboken. And if you're able to sign up and register with YouTube, our main platform, you could text in and ask a question or make a comment or simply say, hi, we're watching you. So that's what's going on here. So, welcome. Going to shake hands here.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Our hands were
Thank
lower,
you.
but we were shaking.
Thank you for inviting
And
me.
things will sharpen up here, I think, as we talk. It takes sometimes a second to align. First of all, I always like to reference the background in the pictures. And I understand this is the Caparra Homes.
Yes.
Did I
that's
say that
correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay, I've said it like 4 times. Caparra Homes. And where are we?
This is on Adams Street. I still own 89 Adams Street. That was one of 20 Caparra homes.
And what's Caparra?
Well, Caparra, that was the name that was selected for a cooperative, a housing cooperative that I was instrumental in helping put together. It was developed as a nonprofit corporation. We went out to bid like everybody else for the property through the Urban Renewal Agency. We won the bid because nobody wanted the land in downtown Hoboken. And so we were able to bid, get the assignment. We had 2 years to develop it, and eventually we did. There were 20 families that basically got together, and they pooled their down payments, and we were able to get a federal grant out of it and develop 40 units. The homeowner would have the first floor, and the second floor was dedicated to Section 8 low-income families, large low-income families. They were 3-bedroom units.
So make sure I understand it. So these are kind of 2-family homes?
Yes, there were 2-family homes. There were 20 2-family homes, obviously,
Okay.
40 units.
And it still exists today?
Yes, it's regarding the Section 8 that expired after 25 years.
Right.
And the federal government at that point did not renew it. So at this point, most of, if not all of it, is market.
Got it. So with 2-family homes, so there's a homeowner on the first floor and the second floor gets rented out?
Yes, that was the original concept. Today, most of them are precisely that, but some of them have both units rented.
Got it. And like they don't live there anymore.
live there
and
anymore.
after 25
Right.
years, they could do what they
In
wanted.
fact, it's been 40 years, so I believe there might be 6 or 7 original homeowners still involved with Caparra. We do have an association that I'm still active with, Homeowners Association.
And was this a response to what year are we talking?
In
Circa.
the early 80s, 1983 is when it started to be developed, and it was occupied in 84.
And what was going on in Hoboken at this time? I mean, is this part of gentrification and a response to it, or
the rationale for this was an opportunity. Again, there was land that I was well aware of that was not people were not moving forward. Developers were not interested in developing in downtown Hoboken, certain areas, and so. The other thing that was happening was, in fact, it was an expensive proposition to buy a home. At that point, you needed $50,000. That's just kind of a range as a down payment for a $250,000 home, and that was difficult for a lot of us. Most of the people that eventually helped in this cooperative were city employees. They were teachers, majority were teachers. We had two policemen, we had a firefighter, a truant officer, some secretaries, and I think one or two county workers may have been part of it. But again, the majority were city employees, in one fashion or another.
And was there a lottery, or how did people get chosen for it?
Well, at that point, I ended up trying to recruit the people because it was all on paper, in other words, and it was quite difficult because you were shown a paper. I would call a meeting and say, listen, this is an idea. And so you had to make a commitment, to put up money on paper without seeing the building, without seeing a brick or a mortar go up. So a lot of people looked at it and they just walked away.
Sure.
But fortunately, I was able to put together 20 families. Must have gone through about 40 or 50 families to get to 20. Some people, I asked them to, please attend the meeting, and they wouldn't show, and that was it. You had to attend the meeting, you had to converse. We had a series of meetings with the families, and ultimately we also included the mayor, obviously, for his support.
So were you an elected official at this point, or community?
No, I was still on a housing authority at that point. I wasn't elected or.
Right, got it.
And I worked at the Board of Ed. I believe I was a supervisor at the time.
Right. And would you say this is one of your proudest accomplishments?
Well, it was one of the accomplishments that I would say I still talk about a lot. And I do mention that it probably should have been replicated. And you get into politics, and obviously it wasn't replicated. Some of it was the federal government moving away from Section 8, and some of it was the locals. That others had different ideas to develop, but this was perhaps the best model, in my opinion, of affordable housing, because it focused on moderate income home ownership and low income large family residential apartments. And let me just comment that the present issue that exists in Hoboken and in a lot of places was that has been that the opportunity for moderate income families has evaporated. There's still remnants, there's still low income family housing that exists, maybe not enough of a low income family, but there hasn't been real development for moderate income, lower middle class families.
And it's not a traditional high-rise housing authority, 7-story, 8-story building.
The Caparra wasn't, but
Right.
even if they move forward with multi-family high-rise for moderate income, as the case of K&E and Marion
Towers.
Marion
Yeah,
Towers.
sure.
They were focused on moderate income,
Right.
and even Marine View on Hudson Street. Originally, people said that was expensive. Today, it's, I think, a little more affordable than some of the other markets.
Sure. And these places have a little front yard, a gate area, and is there a backyard too?
Yes, everybody has a little front yard, backyard, and there's parking that's actually in the rear of the building.
There you go.
And that's a valuable commodity. That,
Sure.
It was valuable then, and it's still valuable now.
So, not to get into real estate too much, but I just everyone's curious.
Yeah.
So originally you could get your place in 83 for how much?
The total cost of building the construction at that point was an average of $110,000. And we were required to everybody had to put up $10,000, so we came up with a couple of $100,000. We were able to secure a grant for about $300,000, and that's how we moved forward. One of the aspects that was required was that it had to be pre-sold, 100%.
Right.
Now, if you know anything about development, a lot of developers don't have that. They don't have that as a requirement. But here we were a nonprofit, and we were required to make sure that all the properties, all 20 units, were pre-sold before the bank would give us, lend the money for construction and mortgage money. Right. So it was challenging.
Mm-hmm. No, it's, I mean, I can just imagine as you're trying to put it together, it almost could seem a little hopeless.
It took several years, and they were obstacles.
Sure.
I'm thinking about writing a short story about it.
Okay.
And
okay.
there'll be several obstacles articulated.
Sure.
I'm sure.
And then just to complete the transaction, if a unit came up, a two-family came up today, approximate value?
It could go anywhere from 1.5 to 1.7.
Right.
I might be undercutting some
Okay.
people.
And it's crazy when you know, obviously inflation and, you know,
Yes.
the money changes, but
Sure.
still, when you were putting it together in 83, you're just thinking, can we fill all these units? You're not really thinking.
Yeah, I never thought
Yeah.
that far. And in fact, I could share a thought that at one point I said, well, this would be good. Maybe 20, 30 years from now, it could go for 300,000.
Right, yeah, yeah. And people would
much
say, you're
more.
crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And the idea of buying a place as almost like an investment for the future, usually I don't think a lot of people wouldn't think that way. They're just thinking, improve the quality of my life, get more space, you know, stability.
It was an opportunity to buy a house and to remain in Hoboken.
Right.
That was the first thing. Now, there were some stipulations as far as the grant is concerned. We had, if you stood there for 10 years, you didn't sell it, it was a grant.
Right.
If you sold it prior to 10 years, then you had to pay back
Right.
your share of the grant.
Sure, sure. Wow, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it had some complications.
And you kind of wish more of that type of planning wasn't done.
Yeah.
You know, you had some of that later years, let's say on Park Avenue with some of the units that were put together. I believe, you know, where people who were living there were able, it wasn't new construction, but they were able to buy their units with the developer rehabbing them and so on. But this is pretty special. This is the longest we've ever spent on a first slide that came up. So
okay.
don't worry, we won't do
Maybe
that for
I'll
all of
just
them. No.
speak a little less.
Yeah, no. I encouraged it. It's a great topic. And I think people drive by these houses and they look a little different than the rest of the neighborhood. I mean, they got 40 years now, right?
Yeah.
You know, so, but still they're newer construction and low rise compared to what's being
Yes.
built now with, shall we say, high rise luxury apartments. And to think of Adams being on the fringe of Hoboken, like, you know, no one wants to live there or no one wants to develop that land. Now they're developing on Jackson Street.
Every inch.
Yeah, every inch counts. So anyway, cool. Okay, so Louise and Jacqueline Allman. Hi, Mr. Duroy and Bob.
Louise.
And
They were the family one of the families at Caparra.
oh, great.
Caparra Homes.
Oh, good. Good.
So, hello.
And are they still there or
No. They
Okay,
live out
but
of
you're
town,
still
they were one
you're
of
still
the
in
original,
touch.
Original families.
Original
yeah.
families. Wow. Almost seems like a little publication on the history of, you know, that type of housing
Yes.
would be interesting. And you're the guy to write it. Okay. So we're going to go to some of the pictures you brought to us
geez.
today. And, you know, I'm not going to say I recognize you, but I'm sure it's you.
That's me in Puerto Rico at age, I think, 1.5. And my mother keeps saying my lips are formed and calling my father's name, his nickname was Paco. And so that's what I'm puckered up saying, Paco.
Okay, it probably is true. And this is the housing in Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
And so what age do you come here?
We came here I was into Hoboken. I was 3 years old.
Right.
3 years old in '53. We moved to an apartment, 321 Adams Street.
So Adams is kind of your neck of the woods.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So it was a couple blocks away. Today, I still have property there.
Right.
What's interesting was 321 was right in the middle of the feast.
Oh.
But when we bought it in the spring, we didn't know anything about the feast.
They never tell anyone, right?
And all of a sudden came that long weekend, Labor Day weekend, and the block filled up, and the festivities.
Because the club is right on the corner
Yes,
there.
right.
Oh, that makes
right on the corner.
sense.
So we were in the middle of the block and right off the block, and it was an experience when I was
As
little kid.
a young kid, you probably thought we were at war or something.
Well, I wasn't crazy about some of the fireworks,
Right. Get you going.
A little frightened of
Sure.
the fireworks.
Got it.
Because they were so close, right?
Right.
20, 30 feet away from my apartment.
Right. I can imagine how strong they were at that time, because even in the 80s, it was like pretty wild too.
Right.
They've sort of calmed down a little bit.
Yeah, and then we moved in 1955. We moved to Garden Street, 102 Garden Street, and that's when I started kindergarten at Roos School, and I went there up until the 5th grade in 1960.
And tell me a little bit about your parents and why they came. And
Well, my father was a World War II veteran. He spent 5 years in the military, and when he came out of the military at the end of the war, he met my mother. In 1947, they moved to New York City. My brother was born in Brooklyn, my older brother Frank. And then, but they had some difficulties with employment and housing discrimination. And so they decided to go back to Puerto Rico.
Huh.
And then in '48, my sister Edith was born, and then 1950 I was born in Puerto Rico. So the two of us were born there. So the family grew to 5, and there was also extended families there. And the economics was such, and my father and my mother said, look, it's better we go back to New York City because at least both of us could work, and that's what they did. So they moved back to New York in '51. And in '53 was when we moved to Hoboken.
do you remember why? What were the stories why you came to Hoboken?
Well, it was they wanted a more quiet neighborhood than the Bronx.
3rd and Adams?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
than the Bronx, but it was quiet when they moved there.
Except for that 1 week. Right.
And one of your questions regarding their advocacy for us was education. And my father and mother always talked about the need for us to get good education, and that meant going to college. And so ultimately, after in '53, '54, my younger brother was born, and then in the early '60s, my youngest sister was born. So there was 5 of us.
Wow.
And my mother and my father were able to help us get through college. All of us got our degrees, and in many respects ended up in different professions. Should I say mainly education?
Right.
Mainly
right.
education.
Sure. And your siblings are fairly accomplished, right?
Well, my older brother became a science professor at Essex Community College. My sister was the financial aid director of Montclair State University. My younger brother was a speech therapist in Jersey City and Riverside, California. I believe it's Riverside. And my youngest sister, who's still active, is the director of senior services, Mahwah, New Jersey.
Wow. So education and services, I mean, it seems like your parents must have been pretty proud.
Well, yeah, that was what they emphasized, and they were able to accomplish that, and we were able to pursue our degrees. My mother worked up until the age of 80 in education. She originally did a short sting here in the Hoboken schools, And then when she moved to Rutherford, she worked for the Rutherford schools as a teacher assistant, as well as in daycare centers.
And did you feel your education in the Hoboken schools was a good start?
It was a good foundation. We all went through the school system, and we were all ended up going to college. So it was.
And back then, you didn't really have private schools in Hoboken, not that much, I don't think.
There were a few.
yeah.
The parochial schools
Right.
had a presence here.
Sure,
At that
sure.
point, at least 5 parochial
Right,
schools.
that's true. I forgot
And there
about.
was one Stevens Academy, which is a private school.
Right,
they had.
right. That's true. That's true. But they felt the public schools, were adequate, and
Well, yeah. I mean, it was an opportunity for us to put it this way. We went through the public schools. We did the best that we could through the public schools. They were very helpful. I remember when I first graduated, I didn't go right to college. I was placed in a bank in Wall Street. For some reason, we had a gentleman that had this knack or contacts in Wall Street, and kids from Hoboken take the train, and in 15 minutes you were in Wall Street area. And he placed us from Chase Manhattan Bank, Marine Midland Bank, Manufacturers Bank, General Electric, AT&T, Dean Witter, Stock. These are names of companies that from Hoboken High School, kids were placed in
Cool.
New York. So we had opportunities there.
And as a kid, would you take family trips into the city, or would you go into the city with friends or your siblings?
When I got to high school and certainly in college, we would go. Prior to that, we went to Brooklyn to visit family members, and we would take the Barclay Street ferry from Hoboken to Barclay Street.
Right.
And then the trains.
Sure. I mean, sometimes you hear about kids growing up during that time period, and they'll say, "We didn't go into New York. Their parents are busy working.
Yeah.
They just didn't see it as
We didn't
a
go.
plus."
We didn't go to Rockefeller Center or anything
Okay,
like that.
right.
The way we do as we got older.
Right.
But,
Visiting your relatives and so on.
Yes.
Sure.
So when we got to college, my sister once in a while would have an assignment. She attended Montclair State College at the time, and she would have to go to the opera for the art class or the museum, and I would go with her.
Sure. So we have Carmen on saying hello. And was Carmen at your book release party?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But she
Sure.
is a good friend from Perth Amboy. She's friends with my wife, and she works in the hospital. She's very, very good. Speaks with my wife at least once a week.
Oh, cool.
Now, Anthony Maestri is a good friend. He's a young kid that grew up in Hoboken.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I remember coaching him. I was a Babe Ruth coach, and Anthony was one of the players. And when I eventually left Hoboken schools to go to Paterson, he was working for a brokerage house here in Weehawken. And he was looking for a change, and I recruited him to come to Paterson and get involved in education. And he did.
Cool. That's a nice story.
And
Alicia?
this is my younger sister. Again,
She's reminding you'd go to Parks and Bear Mountain.
We go to Park. Oh yeah, we would go to. My father had a car. Not too many in the block had the cars. But
Right.
My father had a car, and we would go to Bear Mountain very often.
Sure.
Both the summer and the winter. We would see ski jumps.
Oh, cool.
He would always he wanted us to go out and venture on Sundays after
Right.
church. We would go.
Would you ever get to Palisades Amusement Park?
We did.
Right.
We did, and not as often as we would like to have because it cost money, and we didn't have as much. But we did get to go to Palisade Amusement Park.
Gotcha.
In fact, my niece Autumn lives a couple of blocks away from the site.
Okay.
And I keep reminding her, this was Palisade
Yeah,
Park. This was
I know it too, and every time I drive by,
They have all
I
those
say
big
that,
buildings there.
and people go, "What?"
What?
Whatever. And what is it? Hiram's Root Beer Place,
Oh,
or
yes,
is
sir.
across
Yeah,
the street,
Hiram's,
is
sure.
still there.
Yes.
And so to get a sense of low rise or what was there 50 years ago
Sure.
on there. So we're growing up.
I was 8 years old. I was in the 4th grade, I believe, at David E. Roos School. And I had a tooth missing, so you can see the
Right.
And they made me smile anyway.
Sure.
And there's the cracks on the old.
Yeah, who's taking care of these pictures?
Yeah, I don't know. But,
No, it's great you
I'm
have
glad we dug them out.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Again, that's me at high school, 1968 graduation picture.
Got it.
You know.
You were commenting on the hairline?
Yeah, when I first came out, I said, "How can we get rid of that?" Because I don't remember having that. But what's interesting is that everybody, and a lot of people didn't know that, everybody, when you took the photo, you had to put on the tuxedo jacket. Every
Right.
kids,
Sure.
all the kids. But when I attended Hoboken High School, every kid had to wear a jacket and a tie.
Every day.
Every day.
Right.
A lot of people didn't believe that, and I remember when they were doing an evaluation, Middle States evaluation, and the fellow said, "Oh, you're putting on a show?" And the principal, Mr. Gaynor, was very upset. He said, "Because these kids wear the jackets and ties every day,
Right.
not for a show."
Right. But this is more formal, right? This
Yeah,
jacket.
this obviously
Okay.
was more formal. We
Right.
didn't
Okay.
sew up like
Okay.
that.
I just want to be sure.
That was the photographer
That
board
would be
with a
like
couple
the
of
Glee
tux
Club or
jackets
something.
and,
Yeah.
And everybody that took the photo had to take it with the tux on.
Got it. Autumn,
Yes.
the best niece around. Thank you for creating the opportunity for Chantel and I to grow up at 89 Adams.
That's correct. She's one of the Caparra babies, so to speak. She grew up in Caparra and at 89 Adams Street. And today, I mean, she went on to Syracuse University. She attended Hoboken High School. She got a series of scholarships, attended Syracuse University. At one point, she was a school principal. Now she's an educational consultant.
And isn't she a trustee at Syracuse of some sort?
She is, I think, the School of Education.
Right. So she helped coordinate your event here at the museum a few months back, and she was amazing. I mean, it was like a military operation in a good way. In a good way.
Well, she's expecting twins these days.
Whoa.
I guess a month away or so.
Okay.
And so we wish her the best, obviously. And thank you, Autumn, for all your help.
She was amazing. And okay.
This was in 1971. It was a summer program that the city had sponsored several programs, and this was one that under the Christian Reformed Church, Reverend Lewis had housed this group. I was the director, and we had a very talented art photographer, Caroline Redden. And she taught photography to everybody, including myself. I took some of her classes and still take pictures. And it goes back to what I learned from those classes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to know her by her pre-marriage name, Carlson, Carolyn Carlson.
Did I say
but you said Reddick, which was her married name.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right.
But I'm just saying that because,
Carolyn Carlson, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, it's fine. And we know the family really well. And Carolyn is in a facility in New York, actually. different health issues, but her family has been very supportive to the museum. Yes, Autumn is saying party planner extraordinaire. I meant to say that. I always had trouble of your title. I must say that. And I won't forget the balloons either. Anyway.
Oh, geez, the balloons with flames.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, tell us a little more about this group, and how do you know? Were you friends before you started this publication?
Well, I met a lot of people that just kind of signed up to be a part of it. Some of them were the college students that participated. Some of them were high school students that also participated in the project. It was an arts and craft and recreational program that we put together. Again, on 310 out of 310 Hudson Street. And then toward the end of the program, and during the program, they were teaching the photography. Then at the end, Caroline was able to put together this magazine. I wrote an editorial, and we included poems and people who wrote, and mainly photography, or taken by the kids, some as young as 8 years old. And on to some in their early 20s.
Right. The family recently donated Carolyn's archives to the museum, and one part of that was actually that original exhibit, which are, small 8x10 prints, but they're in pretty good shape, and we'll probably do an exhibit up here, in the upper gallery.
I do have one that I recall with the hands kind of put together. That it's all maybe if you find that.
Okay, I will
I'd like
look.
to see it.
And we hope to do an exhibit with a contemporary photographer who's been doing photographing with the kids in the schools and over at the Housing Authority, and to put together a similar type project. So we may even put them together, sort of. What year do you think this is around?
This was 71.
71 to 2026.
Oh, okay.
I may have the name wrong, but Roberto Rosa is the contemporary teacher photographer. He would be like Carolyn,
Yes.
and putting together interpretations of growing up in Hoboken today on there. And so
great.
I don't have the poem, or I don't have the editorial you wrote, but you were pretty political. Your perspective for a 20-year-old was pretty well formed.
Yeah, we were active. My brother was active in politics at the time, and I believe in inclusion. I believe that the city, which was diverse, that the government, the council needed to be diverse, and so I was active toward that goal.
Sure.
And so I was, I helped in registration. At the time, you were able to go to the homes and register the people, and that's how I was able to recall, even for the book that I wrote, recall the apartments, the houses, and some of the needs that existed, the violations in particular.
Sure.
Some doors were broken, windows were broken in the hallway, and things of that nature, and it didn't seem as if it was being corrected.
Right.
So I went through a number of tenement buildings registering people.
Right. And was there someone who was kind of a political mentor for you growing up? Do you remember?
My older brother was active, but there wasn't. I recall later on, I was very active with Anthony Romano.
Okay.
Who was a councilman. But at first, we had to do it on our own.
Sure.
It wasn't like we had somebody pushing us. And in addition to Anthony Romano, we also worked with Councilman Capiello at the time. He was active, and he had reached out to us also. So then ultimately he became mayor, and then you get the division at the time, the
Sure.
70s, we were not supportive. what was occurring with the housing was very challenging.
Sure. Steve Cappiello was originally a policeman, right?
Yes.
And then got involved in politics, councilman, and then mayor. Were there many, shall we say, political leaders that were elected leaders that were of Puerto Rican or Hispanic background?
No, there wasn't any.
Right.
There wasn't any in Hudson County, for that matter.
And
so,
the population in Hoboken, Hispanic, is got to be 30%.
it was
plus?
around 35% or so.
Right, which is kind
one
of
point.
amazing.
But as you're aware, for example, in the wards, they're gerrymandered, and so there wasn't a real concentration that would result in getting Hispanic elected solely until 1987, and that's when I was elected.
Right.
But even then, a lot of people don't know this, and this may or may not have appeared in the Caparra, is that when Caparra was developed, there were 20 families, but we were really like in two different blocks, first in Jefferson Street and Adams and Grant. But the water line divided Caparra. And so 2 years prior to that election, a year and a half prior to the election, I started lobbying for Caparra before it was even completed to be all in one ward. And eventually, when the board at the county voted for it, they did move the line and included Caparra Homes in the 4th ward. And again, as a resident of Caparra, and at that point, it was the 3rd time I ran, and I won. I was very fortunate. It was also during campaigns that I met my wife, because Santa was active with her mother. Her mother was very active, Lydia Rodriguez, and she was supportive of my campaign, and then ultimately we got married.
Cool. Cool.
Different.
Politics and love. Isn't Dr. Duroy on the cover of the Miracle Mile mirror? Yes, yes.
I'm the one with the sunglasses in the lower right or your left.
Right. To the right of Carolyn.
Yes, that's me.
And
Okay.
Catherine Perez?
Pickenich.
Okay.
Perez.
Yes. I can't believe I said that wrong. I know that name.
She was one of our neighbors up here on 12th and Garden Street.
Okay.
Very supportive. She went to school with my sister, and I knew her family well.
Right.
It's very nice.
I think 12th and Garden, architecturally, just the way it's been maintained or been brought back, is one of the nicest blocks in Hoboken, if not the nicest, in terms of brownstone.
Yeah, we lived at 1208 Garden Street. The mayor at the time, Louis de Pascal, lived up the block.
Right, right. Michael Coleman lived on that
And Michael
block?
was one of our neighbors.
Sure.
As well.
And then Benedict J. Fernandez, the photographer, lived
Yes.
at the other end.
Yes.
Pat Donnelly
Yes, Miss
and her
Donnelly.
husband.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think of the older German family that were there on your side of the block. Willingborg.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
Willenborg.
recall.
And then across the street, you had Anita Heimbrook, photographer who worked at K&E,
Okay.
who was maybe hard of hearing. And we have her collections of images.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Oh.
from the 50s and 60s.
Right.
So anyway, I love that block. So,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
whatever.
I passed it today.
Okay, cool. And okay, tell us more. Oh, so we can stay on this image, but just review again. You ran for city council.
In 19, well, I had to run for 3 different positions. First, I ran for county clerk. I think it was 83 or 84.
And why would you run for county clerk? It just
I was asked to run and recruited by at that point not just the mayor in Hoboken, but the mayor of former mayor of Jersey City, who was Tom Smith.
right.
And they reached out to me. At first, I wasn't sure I wanted to run, but they convinced me to run for county clerk, and I ran.
Well, you said county. I was thinking city clerk,
No,
which
county.
would be more appointed.
Yeah, after that,
But county
I
clerk.
did run in '85 for city council, and that was not successful. My brother had run 3 times, and he had not achieved his goal. He ran for mayor and twice for councilman. And so I figured in '87, I said, this is my 3rd time, it's my last time. I said, either win or go home. I wasn't going to run anymore. And sure enough, I was elected councilman.
So trying to think of so Tom Vizzetti is the mayor?
Yes, at the time that I was elected,
Right.
that's correct.
And Tom Newman would have been a city council member?
He was in the 1st ward, I was in the
Right.
4th ward.
And let's see, Angelo Valente? Or no? Okay.
No, I don't believe so. He was a housing commissioner with me.
Okay. And Helen Cunning?
She came, yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, you're talking about the ward, yeah. Helen was elected with Tom Vassetti and
Pat Pasculi?
Pasculi.
Right. And Dave Roberts?
Dave Roberts was in the 6th ward. That I
Right.
recall,
There's probably more, but those are names that
Right.
sort of roll off kind of easily. So the 3rd time you win. And did that feel good?
You know what? At that point, it was sort of a calling. I mean, we still had not elected a minority, if I could use that term. I mean, a Hispanic or Puerto Rican had not been elected, and at that moment, it was a milestone for the community.
Sure.
And I'll never forget that evening. It was just hundreds of people just gathered, and they were very happy that we broke the glass ceiling.
Uh-huh. And did you have campaign headquarters anywhere?
Yeah, we had it on Jefferson Street. It was an old storefront that needed repair, and so we did the best we could with it. I don't even think we had heat in there.
Just lots of people.
Yeah, just people, and it wasn't big, so we couldn't fit it. So that evening we were out in the street, so to
Sure.
speak. It was just
And
amazing.
that wasn't a citywide election with the mayor. That would have just been
that was a ward election, the 4th ward,
right.
and it included from Caparra Homes all the way into the Housing Authority projects.
Right. So at that point, Caparra Homes was all in your district,
yes.
in your ward, which was pretty smart because,
Right.
you would have some influence in a sense from your good deeds
Sure.
and so on. So that's
I
cool.
probably wouldn't have run if it was still split because I wasn't interested in running in the other
Got
the
it.
other wards.
Got it. So Donna Rodriguez, and you were a great councilman. You helped a lot of people. Thank you, Dr. Duroy.
She was also a Caparra Home owner as well.
Right, right.
Donna, very active, very successful in her career
Cool.
in education.
And I'm just trying to think of what would have happened to so many people if you hadn't gotten this stable housing.
Well, it probably would have left Hoboken. Would have continued working. A lot of them were teachers here, and they probably would have bought out of town.
Out
They
of
just
town.
could not, they couldn't afford the down payment.
Sure.
But for what we did with Caparra,
As we know, anyone who's in police or fire, just coming on, those institutions, it's very hard to live in Hoboken and raise a family.
you need a large down payment.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So that's happening in many cities.
No, I know.
I mean,
Sure.
New York City, right across the river. Manhattan's gotten to the point where people can work there, but they can't live there.
Right.
Can't afford,
Sure.
a good
Right.
part of the city.
jumping around a little bit, but who did you run against that last time for city council?
In the fourth ward was against Florence Amato.
Oh, of course.
Amato
Wow.
family,
Okay. So that was kind of a big win.
It was. It was. First time around, I got like 49.5% of the vote, and I just needed like 4 votes to avoid a runoff. And unfortunately, that one family, I think we call them the Perez family, went to Puerto Rico. They had 6 votes, and we ended up having to have
Oh,
an
because
election.
you had counted ahead of time. Yeah.
And they, well, subsequently, I won in the second time around.
Right. Okay. And thanks for sharing all that. I didn't know if we were going to go there, but no, it's so interesting.
Okay.
And then this image is a newspaper clipping and kind of represents another part of your career.
Yes, in 1972, I was appointed to the Housing Authority. I was 21 years old. And,
So how did that happen so young? I mean,
well, at that point, Steve Cappiello was on the council, and he had asked my brother, if he thought I could, if I wanted to be on it, and then I was directly asked. I said, sure, I would serve as a housing commissioner.
right.
And I just want to share a thought. My first session, I'll never forget my first session. See, when we moved here in the 50s, the housing authority was supposed to be what they used to call it veteran housing, where veterans had preference for housing. My father was a veteran, and it took us 7 years before we were given opportunities
Wow.
to move into the housing authority. And we had applied by the mid-50s, again, with showing the veteran papers, and it just didn't happen. So when I first walked in 1972 as a commissioner, I told that story. I said, I want to let you know that my family it was uphill for us. It was not fair that at the time when you gave veteran preference, we were not given the opportunity. And there were others which were not veterans, which were
Right.
not, but it was very political.
Sure.
But fortunately, we ended up with a 4-bedroom apartment, a brand new 4-bedroom apartment
Right.
on 3rd and Jackson Street, which was amazing for us.
Wow.
It's a beautiful, beautiful housing.
Right, right. Lonnie Morrison, Dr. Duroy, some of my most significant experience in education was working with you and the Operation Link Up program in Paterson, New Jersey.
Yeah, Lonnie was a representative from Syracuse University, a recruiter from Syracuse University, and we worked very closely with Syracuse University. In particular, in Paterson, we had a program called Operation Link Up, and we would take kids from Paterson to Syracuse to visit the campus.
Right.
And once in a while, I would go as a chaperone. Even though I was superintendent, I would go with the kids up to Syracuse. And Lonnie just did a phenomenal job helping the kids from all over, including Paterson.
Right. And you wore your winter coat in the right season.
It was
Yeah,
cold. Yeah.
And so also, who's that next to you, the woman?
Yes, I'm there taking the oath with my mother.
Okay.
And the fellow next to me is Leo Smith Sr. He was the vice chairman of the Housing Authority at the time. And the guy, just the extreme, holding the book, is the city clerk.
Jimmy Farina. No.
Farina's father-in-law.
Predecessor. Oh, that's right. What's the name? It's
I forget. His daughter.
Irish?
No. I worked with his daughter, Patricia.
Okay.
So-
Got it.
Sorry
Just
that I
kidding,
forgot
Jimmy.
her.
Just kidding. This is 72.
Yeah.
And Leo Smith was the father of Evelyn Smith?
Evelyn Smith from Hoboken.
right.
And I was good friends with his son, Leo Smith Jr.
Right.
Played football at Hoboken High School with him as
Right.
well.
Dad looks like a football
Leo
frontliner,
had
too.
senior had a history in the Black Negro League. He played in the Negro League. I think he was a first baseman like his son.
Right.
Grew up to be a first baseman. And he was also a union leader.
Right. Yeah. Very. There are pictures of him with Kennedy, I believe, and I think Emerson Radio, right on the
Yes,
edge
yes,
of by the Holland
absolutely.
Tunnel, was
Yes.
kind of his workforce. And let's see, Noel, Tippy Native American versus Salute.
Noel is a neighbor of mine right now in South Amber. He's very active. We work a lot of small jobs and around my house. So he helps me out tremendously.
Oh, great. Good. Yes, happy Black History Month.
Absolutely.
Yep, we're actually doing a Black History Poets Roundtable this weekend. So Housing Authority, and then this predates your city council
Yes.
win and
Yeah.
that period.
Again, from 72, I was a housing authority from 72 to 91. I think it was 20
That's
years.
a long time.
20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've seen transformation. What a lot of people don't know is in the beginning, when I joined, it was not just the housing authority, they were the urban renewal agency.
Right,
And
you're talking
so
about that.
They were responsible for Marine View Plaza development, for Marion Towers, for a number of nonprofits, including Caparra Homes, the Knights of Columbus. A lot of those projects and the Housing Authority all came through the urban renewal, which was the Housing Authority.
But now there's a different
in
entity
the
for
80s,
many of those.
In the 80s, it was turned over to the city.
Got it.
Community development took over urban renewal.
Sure. Many times we talk to people who were around when the Housing Authority first opened up, in the late 50s or, early mid 50s. And the buildings that they were living in were, let's say, Madison Street, and were not really being maintained and were in poor shape. And when they moved into the Housing Authority, 3 or 4 bedrooms, a parking spot, they thought they hit the lottery.
It was amazing. I don't know if Joe Delafave lived in 8th Street, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But what I want to say is that I refer that transition, a housing transition, in the book that I wrote, Befallen, where when the Housing Authority was first built, many of the Italian and Irish families moved into these new buildings, and they left the older tenement buildings.
Right.
And there was a significant vacancy, and that's how the Puerto Rican community, many of us from New York, got to move to Hoboken, because they had hundreds of units that were available, because I believe there's like 800 apartments that were built by the Housing Authority in the 50s and early 60s, and that created hundreds, again, of
Right.
vacancies.
Yeah, I mean, we've dealt a lot with that time period, but I don't think anyone presented that like that was one of the opportunities, all these apartments that were, let go. Not
Yeah.
great condition, but
Right.
cheap rents. And
Yeah,
that
they
could,
were in need of
and eventually
repair,
that
but,
leads to other things too.
Right.
But I'm really I'm glad to have learned that point. So next image is back to our Caparra Homes, and we kind of covered that, so we'll just
Right,
move on.
right, of course.
Tell us about this image.
Again, this is 1987 when I was sworn in as councilman. This is my wife Santa and I. That day, it was a beautiful day for us in the community, particular Puerto Rican community, to celebrate the first elected councilman.
Right, you're in council chambers.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And how did you guys meet?
Again, she was active with her mother in politics.
You had mentioned it. Yes, right.
And that's how we met, and ultimately got married.
Did she ever think of running or getting?
Not really. She worked in New York for a number of companies. She was into advertisement. Then she became where she worked for nonprofits, and the last one she worked for was the Salvation Army.
Sure.
And so she did everything from secretarial finance to even collecting, ringing the bell.
Okay,
on the
ringing the
holidays.
bell. That's right. Which I think is a digital bell now.
No, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
You're probably right. It's all recorded.
That's right. Okay, you guys look really happy.
Thank you.
Donna Rodriguez, what beautiful couple. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
This is my mother. She's 97 years old. In fact, I was speaking with her today, and she reminded me that she worked until she was 80 in the daycare centers and the schools. Her and my fathers were big advocates for education for the family.
you mentioned this picture was taken on Garden Street?
No, she lives in Rutherford.
Rutherford, sorry, you
Rutherford,
said it, I
that's right.
forgot. Yeah,
In Rutherford. And,
Sure.
this is her.
it does look like a back kitchen, from the 60s
Yeah, it
on
is.
Garden Street. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know. I know. Unfortunately, it still perhaps needs upgrading.
No,
I
it's
don't
fine.
know.
I wasn't making that comment. So I just was thinking Hoboken kitchen. And here you are very proudly with your publication. Tell us, maybe let's go to the next shot too. And here you are at the museum. We had a great book signing event, and the
Yes.
room was full. And I think you said you sold like 100 books, and we can only sit like 45 people. So that means a lot of
It was
people bought
standing
two.
room.
It was standing room only. It was one of the strongest events of 2024. But again, tell us about the book.
Yes, I was inspired by the museum. I mean, the museum had held two special events. One by a fellow from Princeton University, Gottlieb, who had done a study on the Hoboken fires. And the second was a presentation here at the museum by a fellow by the name of Chris Lopez, who was a very talented art historian. I had grown up in Hoboken, so I witnessed some of the fires directly. So I thought it was an opportunity for me to write this book, because I don't think there was any book up to this point specifically written about the fires. I was very moved by the fact that the fires affected the majority of the people that were affected were children, And when I joined the school district in '77, I used to assist in keeping or writing up the October report, which is the annual report that's submitted to the state for funding. And in that, you keep you have to present the statistics. And so from '77 on, I would see the enrollment drop, and significantly. And I was well aware that prior to even '77, the enrollment in the public schools was a little over 7,000. And you had 5 parochial schools. And that eventually dwindled down. But during a period of time in the book, we lost about 2,000 kids as a result of the gentrification process. That's a large number. People don't, again, that has not been written about. And so that's included in the book. And of course, obviously, the focus in the book has to do with the fatal fires. There was a good 6 to 8 fatal fires combined. There was a couple more, but combined that I identify in the book was 67 people died from 1973 to 1982. Again, I was in many ways inspired by the activities of the museum and my own experience.
Just noting a comment from Luis and Jacqueline. Unfortunately, we lost several friends in these fires while we were in Brant and Hoboken High.
Right, that's correct. In fact, recently I posted the fact that I published a book, Befallen. I posted it on Hoboken High School page. I forget what you called it. And I got over 100 comments, and a good number of them were similar to what Lewis and his wife just put down. They recall people that had left Hoboken say, yeah, I recall growing up in Hoboken. I had family members. And there was one story which was moving where the teacher had helped the kid from 12th in Washington. He used to take him to Connor School where I was. And that one morning, the following morning of the fire, after the fire, the teacher was handed a note. Mr. Rutherford was handed a note, and he just sort of collapsed because it was his student, and he knew the family. So there was a lot of challenges that we faced. In the book, I recall somebody saying, "Well, you can't just write a book about without saying that there was also people that helped." And so there's a notation, more than a notation, but I talk about the heroes. There was the policemen, the first responders. Some of them were the first ones to arrive at these buildings, to run in and to alert the people to get out. There was obviously the firemen that fought the fires and as a result saved lives. There were the teachers that had to talk to the students that then the kids in their class, their friends and neighbors, would not be coming back. There was the people from the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, and the neighbors, the family members that took in other family members when they were homeless. And so there were a number of people that were noted in the book that helped out. And of course, there was the clergy. There's a chapter called Jesus Wept, and it refers to having the empathy and the love for our neighbors. So it's all in the book. At the end of the book, I have the names of the 67 people that perished, the names, their addresses, the dates, and their ages. And you'll see that the majority were children. So both the majority that died were children, and the majority among the thousands that were displaced were definitely children.
Right. Yeah, when we did do the exhibit, we would meet people, not every day, but pretty often, who would just, sort of break down crying. And it was because they went back to, the Monday after, let's say, the El Dorado fire, and just said, I remember those, 5 empty chairs from that family, or, things of that sort.
Sure.
So it's pretty intense. And a lot of people will still, who were here at that time, will talk about if they smell smoke to this day, 40 years later, they sort of go back to that time period because, it was, I think, it was a tough period for people because they felt maybe not enough was doing to prevent them. You figure, okay, maybe there's one fire and maybe it's not arson, but when you have that many together, it was like, what's going on and what should I do and what's my responsibility as a resident?
Well, combined during this period of time, there were hundreds of fires. And yes, maybe there was a dozen which did have fatalities. But the takeaway from the book was that majority were children, as I indicated. Second takeaway was that nobody was held accountable. And the community, the people that were affected, they were not pointing to anybody. They just wanted accountability, regardless of who it was that was responsible. I mean, whether it had anything to do with the landlord or the tenants themselves, or neighbors or arsonists. They wanted justice, and it never came.
Right, right. And to stop, stop these fires.
What was unfortunate also at the time, and it was that there was no smoke detectors.
Right.
The fire department was advocating for it, but it just did not get adopted until early.
It was not a
80s.
state law. Yeah,
No.
sure.
And again, the fire department was very active as a group throughout the state to push for that law.
Sure. Well, glad you wrote the book. Glad you came on today. Just mention the book can be purchased on Amazon just
Yes.
by putting in the title Befallen, and it should come up. And if you're here in the museum, but we do have it in the gift shop also. We have a
okay.
few more copies and may request some more when those go out. And I know that you wanted to end up by reading a poem.
Yes.
Oh, here's Autumn. We got to get
here we
her. Not only were you a champion for great housing opportunities for middle-class families, but you have a champion for high-quality, equitable instruction for children as principal of Connors School. Forgot about Connors School. And superintendent. We didn't even talk about that.
That's correct.
So, yeah, there's a lot more we could have included. Thank you, Autumn.
Yeah, I did serve as Connors School. Autumn was a
You want to introduce this.
okay.
Is this the last image, do we
Yeah.
think? Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So this ties into the poem.
yes.
Do you want to
Sure.
you want to read the poem as this is up? Or
I can do that. I
Sure.
just wanted to just
Sure.
comment that Autumn was a student also of the Connors School when I was principal.
oh wow. Okay.
And so she recalls some of that moment. In the book itself, it was an eclectic genre, and I included poetry, and I wrote several poems, and there was one that I had the opportunity to read at the Bowery Poetry Society in Manhattan. Actually, a combination of two poems from the book, but mainly Fuego, which is the poem that is in the beginning of the book. And when you hear it, or if you get to read it, hopefully, in the book, you'll see that it's written from the perspective and for the children that perished, pretty much. The name of the poem is Fuego, which means fire, obviously. The fire of tragedy burned a dream in my heart. I longed for life's beauty, but will never see. Forgotten in time, the cries of humans cease. Silence comes to those that weep no more. We have died a child's voice, hope shattered, smoke filled, the dream tattered. Who remembers me? Who remembers me? That's Fuego.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heavy words. Thank you for writing the book. And we still haven't found the perfect place to place this this poem, but I was really happy to find it when we were, setting this up.
Sure.
I was looking around. So cool. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we close out?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't get to complete the whole thing with the education background. Maybe
Right.
that's something down the line, but
Sure. There might be a Hoboken Talks 2 down the line.
Well, I'm working on another book that's going to be published in a couple of months. It's a children's book,
Okay.
and I'd be more than glad to come back and present it to. I think you have a children's hour or something.
Yeah, sure.
And my wife and I wrote this book. It's called My Backyard Friends.
Oh, neat.
So it'll be really.
So is it
really
backyard
interesting.
in Hoboken or South
Actually,
Amboy?
it's in South Amboy.
Okay, that's
it's
what I
about
figured.
leaving the city and moving to the suburbs, and and finding all these critters in the backyard.
We got critters too.
Oh, now I hear more critters than perhaps and that's as a result of the disturbance of construction.
Lots of theories.
I mean, I don't recall having skunks here in Hoboken, and now I think last year.
We're not sure if it's a weed or the animals. We're totally confused, actually, but we do know the difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, Louise and Jacqueline, again, your book is amazing, Dr. Duroy. Thank you for representing Hoboken to its fullest. And
Thank you, Louise.
I'll have to say, when we did the
And
presentation here, the love in the room, it really felt full. You know, the people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
Thank
you
you.
felt it, but it was like kind of an emotional. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just watching and turning the lights on, but it must have felt really good for you.
Well, I was really overwhelmed by the number of people that did join us that day, and many of them, like I said, most of them were related in one fashion or another to Hoboken, growing up in Hoboken, and although many of them don't live here now, they recall the days of Hoboken.
Sure.
You know, all those kids that left Hoboken, they wanted to stay.
Right.
People don't realize that.
I know,
Some of
it's
them
very
don't.
sad.
They
Yeah.
wanted to stay.
Right. Sure. Okay. So we're closing out here. Thank you very much. This
Thank
is
you.
really fun. This is really good. And want to thank a few folks. Of course, Dr. Edwin Duroy was our speaker tonight, our presenter. And then this was Hoboken Talks, or is Hoboken Talks. In a few weeks, we'll be presenting, we'll have the host of Jeff Tamarican with Todd Abramson. I forget who's interviewing who. And then we also will have Liz Falco being interviewed by her daughter, Vanessa Falco. And we have a whole host of mother and daughter talks coming up in the future.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The New Jersey Historical Commission is one of our main funders, a great state agency who we thank every day. And New Jersey Council for the Humanities is a good supporter. And we do have a special group known as the Shipyard Circle, who make a high level of monetary donation.
Yes.
And really helps keep things purring here. And we thank them every day also. And then Iron State, formerly Applied Companies associated with the Barry family. We thank them. I thank them every hour of the day, actually.
Yes.
They've given us this great space, which we can do so many interesting programs from. And then we want to mention that in the upper gallery where we're actually broadcasting from, we do have the drawings by Tim Daly, which reference the 1980s time period, the fires, and I'll say the Hispanic community here in Hoboken. It's up until March 9th. That's supported by Hudson County Office of Cultural Affairs. And then our main exhibit is the Hoboken Meadows. It's curated by Holly Metz and support from the museum staff, and that will be up probably till the end of the year. We never quite know how long an exhibit will be up, but it's a lot of interest in this topic of why Hoboken was referred to as an island or as the Meadows, and this exhibit will help educate you in those areas. And then mention that if you subscribe to YouTube, you can make comments, you can share this with others, you can subscribe, and that gives us a better standing. So hope you do that. All these programs are archived, and you can watch them simply by going on the YouTube platform and put in the name of the guest. Or Hoboken Historical Museum. We have well over 100 programs. And as Ray Guzman said the last time we did this, better than Netflix. I don't know if we really mean that, but for a local reach out into the community, we're doing it better than Netflix. So anyway, and a big shout out to Rand Hoppe, who is our producer for the program, and moving the slides and making sure the sound is good and the lights. We thank him for his efforts. And I think we're signing off momentarily. Please join us for the next Hoboken Talks. Thank you, Dr.